Say you're looking for a watch. Say you're looking for a watch that is an automatic with a GMT function. And let's say you want a ceramic bezel and you want a sapphire crystal on it. Well, how much do you expect to pay for something like that? $1,000? Maybe $500? What if I told you that you could have one of these watches for less than $100? Would you think I was crazy? What if I told you it was under $75? You must think I was drunk. Well, today on the channel, I will show you just such a watch. Stay tuned. Hello internet friends, and welcome once again to the Quality Time channel. My name is Lester and I'm really glad that you're here to check out this new watch with me. Now before we get into it, I'd like to go over how I came across this watch, so to give you a little bit of a backstory. Basically, this last November during the Singles Day sales in China, which if you don't know is sort of like a Black Friday in China, where on November 11th they have some crazy online deals. And so my brother, who's based in Shanghai, was interested in picking up one of these Chinese specials. Now, what is a Chinese special? Well, basically, a Chinese special is a watch that is, of course, made in China with some outrageous specs for the money. During this sales time, he picks up two watches, and this is one of them. Before we get into it, let's do our customary wristwatch check. And today I'm wearing another Casio. It is the Casio AE 1200WH, otherwise known as the Casio Royale. This is, of course, a digital watch and arguably all the watch anyone would ever need. It's got so many functions, a really fun piece, and a retro vibe. I love that world map that signifies the time zones on the top right there. It's a very cool piece. Anyway, let's get right into it. All right, so the watch we have in front of us is the Pagani Design Explorer GMT. This is an homage piece, and for those who are unfamiliar, an homage piece is a watch that mimics or basically copies the styling of another famous watch, and in this case it is mimicking the Rolex GMT Master II. The SKU number for this watch is PD-1662, and as you can see, it is the blue and black variant. And there are several other variants, and I will get into those a little bit later in the video. The watch style is a GMT diver. As you can see, it has a bold outer bezel with the 24-hour markings for the GMT time. The case material is full stainless steel. You've got a polished side surfaces and brushed on the top. The dial size is 40 millimeters. However, when you measure here, and it's hard to get on camera, but the case bows out a bit here on an angle, and so I measured a case size of actually 41 millimeters. The case thickness is 14 millimeters, and it has a lug-to-lug width of 47.3 millimeters. However, when you measure from the male end links, then the actual lug-to-lug, if you can say that, is roughly 52.3, so it wears a bit bigger than the measurements would suggest. However, you do get a nice standard 20 millimeter lug width here. It's a nice standard size for straps, and the weight is roughly 156 grams. Now moving on to the bezel, it is a ceramic bezel. The blue and black variant is ceramic. However, the numerals are not loomed, although they might look it. They are unloomed. The bezel type is, of course, a 24-hour bezel, like I mentioned before. It is a 60-click unidirectional bezel, which is not a true GMT bezel because GMT bezels should be bidirectional. But anyway, it's a 60-click bezel. The crown type is a screw-down crown, which is nice. The action is not great, and I'll go over that a little bit later, but you get a screw-down crown, and it's also signed with the Pagani Design logo. The crystal on the front of the watch is sapphire, and it features a cyclops to magnify the date complication here. There is no air coating on the sapphire crystal, however. Now, moving on to the dial, you can see it is a glossy black dial, and I apologize for all the reflections coming into the camera. It's really tough. It's a very shiny watch, but it is a glossy black dial, and it has a printed white minute track going around the outer perimeter of the dial. As for the hands, you can see that the hour hand is a Mercedes hand, of course, homaging the Rolex piece. The minute hand is a sword hand, and you also have a blue GMT hand. This hand will, let you track a time in another time zone. The markers are applied. They're all applied markers. You've got a triangle at the 12. You've got a baton at the 9 and the 6, and circles for the other hours. These are all loomed, as are the hands, and you've got even the second hand has a nice loomed lollipop on it there too. As for complications, like I mentioned, you do have a day complication at 3, and of course the GMT. There is loom, however, I'm not exactly sure which kind of loom it is, and I will show you a loom shot a little bit later in the video. Now, a quick note about the different variants of this watch. This one is the blue and black, but they have other colors if this is not your bag. Basically, they have a all black version, they have a Pepsi version, which is blue and red, and they also have a Coke version, which is black and red. Now, if you had your heart set on the ceramic bezel, be sure to check, because according to the website, some of the variants, particularly the blue and red version, does not feature a ceramic bezel, but instead has an aluminum bezel. So you need to sort of check to make sure that if you wanted the ceramic, that you're getting the right version. Now, this watch does have a display case back. The case back material is mineral glass, so you can see the movement moving away there. It features 100 meters or 10 bar of water resistance, which is great because you don't need to worry about getting this one wet, and of course screw down crown does help with that as well. The movement inside is a Pearl DG5833 GMT. It is a Chinese movement. In Chinese, it's known as Mingzhu. Yeah, I could not really find a lot of information about this particular movement. However, one seller of the movement said it is drop-in replacement for the Miyota 8215. And so I suppose that it is a forehand clone, forehand version of that particular movement. As you can see from the back, it does have a really nice signed rotor, and I'll pop up a macro shot so you can take a look at it. It's branded with the Pagani Design logo. Looks actually pretty nice. Blue screws, and you can see the jewel there, several jewels there. It's really quite good. I don't know how many jewels are in this particular movement, but the Miyota does have 21 jewels, so I'm assuming it's around that number as well for this particular movement. This movement is beating at 21,600 beats per hour, which is a 3 hertz. So not quite high beat, but still pretty good. The power reserve, I could not find any information on that, but the Miyota equivalent is around 40 hours. Moving on to the band, it is a fully stainless steel band. Okay, we've got it's a 3-link oyster style. You've got the polished, very polished middle links, surrounded by the 2 brushed end links. The bracelet starts off at 20, tapers down to a 16, and then 18 at the clasp. You have solid links, solid screw links, which is really nice, and you also have solid end links to go with that. So it's a pretty solid bracelet. The clasp itself is signed and is also fully milled. It has a safety lock there and opens up like that, and you can see it is a fully milled clasp. Pretty well done, I would say. What's interesting about this particular clasp, it has a flip-flop adjustment where you can actually resize the bracelet, giving you on the fly like that, giving you a little bit more room when your wrist swells up in the summertime, for example. So that's pretty nice. I don't see that very often, especially on a watch at this price. Although it is really a little difficult to operate with gloves, but it does snap in just like that. Now, in terms of warranty, Pagani Design does offer a 1-year warranty on their watches. once I put this on to the Timegrapher, in terms of accuracy, I noticed that it is running at a negative 27 seconds a day with a 0.3 millisecond beat error. This is assuming a lift angle of about 49 degrees, just like the Miyota, if it is indeed a Miyota clone. So not the greatest accuracy by any means. So what do I like about this watch? Well, actually, I think it's a really good looking piece, especially there. It looks a lot more expensive than the $75 price tag suggests. You've got a lot of nice polish and brush surfaces, so it's not just one surface treatment, which is pretty nice. It's got good proportions. Again, it's modeled out for the GMT Master II, so I don't expect anything less. Definitely they don't deserve any style points because they just basically took it from Rolex, but there's a reason why the Rolexes are that popular, is because they've had many years to perfect it. And so the proportions are really good. You got that standard 20 millimeter lug width for straps, which is great. The ceramic bezel is also a very nice touch. I believe Jody over at Just One More Watch had an early sample which had a sort of a quality issue with the colors, and as you can see, they fixed it on this version. The blue is supposed to start right between the 18 and the 6, and it does so here, so there's no quality issue there. It has a very useful GMT complication. GMT is one of my favorite complications on a watch. It's great for tracking time zones and knowing if you have, for example, business partners or family abroad and you want to know if it's a good time to call them, then GMT is a great feature to have. It's one of my very favorite complications outside of the date. The bracelet is very solid, again, solid links and end links, and also screw links, which for $75, my goodness, it's very, very rare that you see this level of a bracelet on a watch this inexpensive. Again, the sapphire crystal is nice. It's got no AR, but it's nice to have a sapphire crystal just to give it that longevity, and you don't need to sort of baby it so much compared to like an acrylic. The display case back is also really nice. It is only mineral, but it's nice to see the really nicely decorated for $75 movement in the back. And of course, 100 meters of water resistance means that you don't need to baby it so much. You can take it swimming, take it to the pool, wash your hands, get it wet, get stuck in the rain. Absolutely no problem. So in terms of specs, this watch is really phenomenal for $75. Is this a perfect watch? Absolutely not. I guess the old adage, you get what you pay for. In this case, I think that there are some downsides to this watch, and I'll go through them right now with you guys. First of all, you got some massive play on this bezel. I mean, if you can see, it's a very light action. I'm barely pushing it, and it just kind of rotates. While being easy to use, it means this really wobbles around quite a bit, and it doesn't really give you that solid feeling. It's nice though that to have a bit of play so you sort of line up your indices. The bezel with the indices here, but I mean, if you jostle just a little bit, it's going to be out of alignment, so that's not super great. One thing I really don't like about this particular movement is the action. When you wind it, the word I can only use is gritty, so it doesn't feel very smooth. You do have hacking and hand winding. I didn't mention that before, but if you can see that I can stop the second hand where it is and adjust the time. Okay, and of course you can go ahead and adjust the date at the first position. But the crown action is super gritty. It's not really that smooth. Of course, the male end links make it wear a lot bigger than the 40 millimeter dial size suggests. So if you have smaller wrists, this may not be a perfect fit. It does work for me, but it's just on the borderline, I think. I wish that there was an inverted link. It would make it fit a lot better. It also wears very thick. The original GMT Master II is about 12.5 millimeters. This is 14, and that's not including the Cyclops on top. So it's a bit top heavy. One big downside I found is this movement is running super slow. I mean, minus 27 seconds a day is not great. It's even outside of the the Miyota it's supposed to be cloning. The Miyota is supposed to be minus 20 or plus 40. This is minus 27, which is not great. It's also not a high beat movement. It's only 3 hertz, so the second hand doesn't sweep as smoothly as it could be. One other thing is that the GMT hand is also independent, which means that it's sort of, let me demonstrate that for you. When you go ahead and you adjust the GMT hand by moving the crown to the first position, you can see that it is completely smooth. It doesn't really jump by hour, and so it's not really tied to the hour hand as it normally should, which makes it not so convenient to adjust when you are traveling, for example. So what I would suggest is when you're adjusting this particular watch, first of all, go ahead and adjust the local time to where you need it to be. Okay, say it's 6 o'clock now, and then I want to set the GMT hand by itself to the GMT time. So that's how I would do it. And of course, once you do that, then the GMT hand will be tied to the hour hand of the local time. The markers are, of course, a bit smaller than the original Rolex design, which means that the lume is kind of weak. There's not as much surface area here, and I'm not sure which lume they're using, but it's not very bright. And I will pop a lume shot for you guys to take a look at. The bezel, it is ceramic, but I wish there was some lume on there. If they couldn't lume up the, all the markers, maybe just the top so you can have some orientation. I know the original GMT Master II does not have a lume bezel, but it would have been a nice way to differentiate this watch from its inspiration, let's say. One of the major issues I have with this bracelet, though, although it is nice and solid, is that something is missing. And I don't know if you can see, but there are no holes for micro adjusts, which is a little weird. When you open up the clasp here, and I don't know if you can see that, but there are actually 3 positions for this to move around. But I try as I might, I could not move this at all, simply because it would not, the spring bar here would not move no matter what tool I used. And it doesn't help that there are no holes to sort of activate the spring bar. So wrenching that out is really, really difficult. I couldn't do it, and of course this watch is not mine, so I didn't want to really try to pry it out. So I would say that the micro adjusts are not really functional, which is not great. So that means that you may not be able to get a good fit with this watch. This watch does wear a little bit loose on me, but removing another link would make it too tight. So for me, this would be is not ideal on my 6 1/4 inch wrist. One quality issue I found on this particular watch, and I don't know if it is with all of them, of course, but as you can see, there is a strange blue marking on the clasp. And try as I might, I couldn't scrape it off. I don't know what it is. I didn't want to be too rough with it. Again, it is not my watch, but I could not remove whatever that blue stain is, which is a little strange. In terms of the design itself, I mean, of course, it is modeled after the GMT Master II, but I personally do not like Cyclopses. I think they're ugly, and I would have much preferred this design without a Cyclops. Of course, the GMT Master II does have a Cyclops, but it's not one of the things I like about watches. But that just could be a personal preference. I think that it doesn't look great. And finally, the last negative I would say about this watch is it is a straight up homage. Some people would have a problem with that. They're not comfortable with purchasing an homage or wearing a homage watch. Maybe they think it's like some kind of ripoff, and I don't blame them. If you feel strongly about that, then this design is not going to be for you. I personally am pretty ambivalent. I think that if you like the design and you are not looking to spend the 12 grand for the original, 15 grand for the original, then this could be a good way to get that same look for a lot less money. So what are my conclusions about this particular Pagani Design Explorer GMT? Well, it's certainly not a perfect watch, but if you consider all the materials you get, all the functions, for $75, I mean, the value of this watch is absolutely undeniable. I think if you like the look of this watch, I would recommend it. If you are not opposed to wearing an homage watch, if it doesn't bother you, then I would say go for it. I mean, this could be a great way, a great starter watch for people that want to get into automatics. If you think about it, at this price, you could probably, if you want an automatic watch, you're probably going for like a Seiko 5 or maybe a Orient TriStar, something like this. But those don't have nearly the same materials, and the bracelet is quite solid. And you get a display case back and everything like this, really nicely done. decoration on the rotor. So there's a lot of advantages getting one of these Chinese specials. They give you some great specs, but again, it is not a perfect watch, and of course you're going to from time to time see some QC issues. But overall, I think that if you like the look and homages don't bother you, this is not a bad choice. So we've come to the end of the video, and as always, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I love reading what you have to say about the watches that I review. And also, if you like the video, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the future reviews that I come out with. I have some great new watches coming down the pike, and I wouldn't want you to miss any of them. Anyway, my name is Lester. Thank you for spending some quality time with me. Take care now.